a lot of people have done well. A lot of people haven't even gotten started yet. And so it's very important for us to do what? Pause, measure, and reflect.
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
So it's important for us to go back and kind of look at this, and I just want to kind of go through, and it's important too, when I talk about this is when you're inspired and lit up naturally, right? Like meaning I'm inspired and lit up outside of business, meaning what? My body's on fire, have a lot of energy, things. Guess what happens in business? Things tend to become easier. Would you guys agree with that? Right? When somebody's inspired, they're lit up, they're naturally on fire, what happens in business? The dominoes tend to knock themselves down easier, and it's just how the universe works. When I'm in a bad place mentally, or a tough place, or just I'm struggling, what happens business-wise? You're struggling too. It's very difficult to knock the dominoes down. Why is that? Because people feed off energy. They feed off their subconscious mind and how they calculate you, which makes a big difference. So that's why it's important for you to be inspired outside of work to bring in inspiration inside of work so that people tend to want to listen to you and do business with you as a salesperson. Does that make sense? We talk about the core 4 here, right? I'll do 5 today. Just going to show you the 5 equities of life. I want you guys to kind of look at and understand, right? The 5 equities. So, number 1, overall the 5 equities, and it's like, obviously the core 4, body, being, balance, and business. This one just has the spiritual and mental separated, but it's kind of something for us to break down. Number 1 is family relationships. Family relationships, number 1. Number 2, my health and physicality. You can also call that vitality. Number 3 is finances. Or guess what? Business. Yeah, I put financial, right? Yeah, financial. Number 4, spiritual well-being. Number 5, mental or personal psychology. So this would be what? That'd be a growth and development, right? Mental and personal psychology. Which should also be growth personally and my development personally. So those are the 5 equities, right? We call it core 4, but sometimes people get confused a little bit with the spiritual piece and the mental piece. And that also is growth, which is important. Because one thing, the happiest people in the world focus on 2 things. You know what they are? Nope. Growth and contribution. Say it again. The happiest people in the world focus on 2 things, growth and contribution. Growth comes from them as a human being growing who they are, as a salesperson, as a businessman or businesswoman, as a father or the mother, whatever it is. And the contribution is how they contribute to who? Other people. That would be people like your clients, your co-workers, your family. So if you can teach somebody, this is why it's important to be plugged in with people, because if not, you don't have the second piece of the equation. Guess what you feel? Very lonely. That's why people who just take and don't give a whole lot feel very lonely in many cases. And that's why the contribution piece is super important. Okay? But one of the things I want us to do is go through and take a couple minutes and look back. So looking back, where am I at on a scale of 1 to 10 on each of these? So my family relationships, my health and physicality, my vitality, aka my energy, right? How am I looking here? My financial piece, my financing and my business. That's how I performed my business last quarter, right? Spiritual well-being, mental and personal growth. There's just opportunities that people do what? We'll just dial in and commit to their business and actually make some money so they can free up some of this other stuff. A lot of people tend to have a story that everything else is really being harmed because of business, but the reality is because you don't level up in business is why the other ones struggle. And that could be a commitment to systems, commitment to processes, commitment to actually growing, right? Some people haven't grown in a long time in business, which is why everything else struggles, because they're hitting, what? A ceiling over and over and over. They refuse to grow personally, so they can't understand systems, they can't understand processes, so they hit a ceiling over and over and over, and they tend to struggle with that, and guess what they end up doing? Living in a loop, like this, right? And so that's why it's important to be able to measure these and look at these and understand overall. So, part 2. Where am I committed to being 1 to 10? And just know it's not easy to go from a 2 to a 10. You guys know me that? Like there has to be some type of leveling up over time because these are like a ship. You know, it's like a big ship you're trying to turn because there's a lot of nuances into it. But the goal there is like, all right, how can I be more present in a certain part? How can I be more intentional with a certain part? Because there is things that you're going to have to make sure you can manage that. I want you to understand, like instead of looking for breakthrough, I want to look for progress. And if you're frustrated with it, good, that's kind of the point of showing it to you. But at the same time, right, where you're at right now is perfect as long as you don't stay there. Meaning that I'm okay there as long as I don't stay there, I got to make sure I level that part of me up. But as humans, designed to conquer and do things, we're designed to do what? Move forward. Progress in those areas that we see, which is super important. And so the one thing I want you guys to understand and think about too is that your business will only grow to the extent that you do. Say it again, your business will only grow to the extent that you do. Most people tend to try to just lean on their natural abilities in every part, which is why it gets so frustrating, because they never actually have the breakthrough. Or they don't have a lot of progress. They've been doing the same over and over and over without trying to get better, without practicing, without role-playing, without figuring out systems, without figuring out how to create leverage. All these things matter, which is why they create that same old thing over and over. Part 3. What's the one thing? Remember the book, The One Thing? What's the one thing that I can do that'll change the outcome, make everything else irrelevant? There's always one thing in a scenario. There's a book called The One Thing. It just talks about most time we tend to paralyze ourselves because we tend to overthink and overcomplicate a lot. In the book, The One Thing just says there's always one thing that will make everything else irrelevant. If I just do it, it'll do what?
All the other stuff goes forward.
It'll move the needle, right? It'll change the outcome.
I'll be health and physicality.
Yeah, well, here's how I want you to do it in each one. What's the one thing in my family relationship that I can do that will level this up? What's the one thing I need to commit to in my health and vitality and my physicality that'll level it up? What's the one thing I know I need to do inside my business for myself that I know I need to level up that I've been avoiding? I'm surprised people don't do like Beachbody or like P90X or like whatever it is. You know, like just whatever it is, just like do something to like, yeah, well, that's that. It's something I just know I can plug into for 90 days and I don't got to think about it. Like me, every morning, guess what I hate doing? Going to the gym. But once I get to the gym, I feel amazing because I don't got to think about it. I don't got to show up. I get to that door, I'm good. They create the workout for me. They do all the stuff. They push me. They tell me what to do. I just show up, right? And so I was thinking, well, if I don't want to go to the ISI, what else is there to do? Well, there's P90X. There's, what's all the other ones? There's a lot of cool ones, Beachbody. Insanity, that's a really good one too. That's 60 days. Whatever it is, like what can I do that I can plug into that's just super simple? I don't even got to think about it. And that's what I want you to get. That's like a one simple thing, right? And so whatever it is, but I'm telling you, the health and physicality for most people is probably your weakest link. It's simple, you just aren't doing it. And so it's important for us to make sure we have that piece there with it. And then I want to figure out as I'm going into my goals for this quarter, right, which we'll start going over next week, what's one thing I got to make sure I get that part right. For some of y'all, like it needs to be, hey, look, if I just actually doubled down my business and did what I was supposed to do for a full quarter, everything would change. So the reality is like you got to find something that's going to be simple and that's a one thing for you to fix. Does that make sense? So like, hey, for the mental piece, I'm going to take X course, whatever Blake bought. I'm going to read X amount of books. I'm going to actually pick the books out ahead of time so I know what they are. I'm going to stick with them. Whatever it is, you got to figure out what makes you have that growth because that piece here is what leads to the growth and contribution so that you feel much better in terms of who you are and what you do, right? That's very important for us to understand with that. And that's super important. And The other thing I want you to do, though, is looking back at your business, I want you to write down 10 things you're grateful for in your business. It could be a lesson learned. It could be your growth. It could be what you've seen. It could be the work you did in the morning. A lot of you guys have done really good in the morning with the role play. It's like change everything for you in a way, right? So like make sure that you go back and say, what are those 10 things that I'm most grateful for? I want to shift your energy with that. There's a couple things, and it's super important and why we do that. But it's important to constantly do that and have that bit of gratitude. And what you do, it shifts your entire energy. It shifts in what you do. But it's actually even scientific as well. If it's a bad thing, like if you weren't happy in business, it could be lessons learned. If you're brand new, you're grateful you're here with us with a team of leaders, a team of winners, number one team, Myrtle Beach, whatever it is, right? Write some of that down. Biggest reasons why we suffer are from really a couple main things: frustration, stress, hurt, loneliness. But really breaks down three main things: greed, right? Chasing rewards, hatred, avoiding threats, or delusion of how things really are. And a lot of times it comes down to a story or a delusion about how things really are. That's why the value of stories comes in. It just talks about that suffering is really a choice. But the reason I want to do gratitude here, to just cap that off, is there's two main things it does in your body scientifically. There's your sympathetic nervous system called the SNS, right? It's largely responsible for our body's responses when we're faced with a threat. Your body naturally steps into a red alert, signals chemicals, stress hormones, things like that. That's natural. There's a second one called the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS. It's your normal resting state. It helps you stay calm, clear-headed. It quiets the mind to support contemplative insight. And it says the SNS is like the accelerator in your car, or the PNS is like your brakes, right? You need both systems work together. And it's important that when you have this positivity, it brings out that parasympathetic state in your brain that allows you to make sure you have a different heightened state. So that was just something I want to make sure that we do as we review this piece here, because that does connect where many of you, even if you had a frustrating quarter, did have some type of growth to look at. Second piece, though, I'll teach you guys a little bit something to look forward to this quarter. I want you guys to understand that numbers are the language of business. What does that mean, you think?
Measurable.
Okay, deeper than that. Language is the numbers of business. Numbers is the language of business. Just like French is the language of France, right? German's the language of Germany. Numbers is language of business. And so what does that mean?
You know what? It's how you communicate.
It's the way you communicate and understand business at any level. Most people are not fluent in understanding the language of business. Why is that? Why is that, you think?
So you can get words, not numbers wrong.
They think in words, not numbers. They think in feelings and not numbers. I'll say that again. They think in feelings and not numbers. And so most of you, how you operate in business is not truly in a language of business. It's in a language of feelings. And so most of the time, guess what? It's not right. It's not how you feel. And so it's important for you to understand how to do that and make sure you can track important things. And I want to help you guys kind of look back last quarter, some things I want you to pull together and put together, and some things I want to look going forward. There's two types of numbers that are super important. There's lead indicators. Second part, lagging indicators.
You say lag?
Yeah, lagging indicators. Lagging. Lagging indicators. Anybody know what those are? So lagging indicator for us would be things like they measure the actual results. So they measure the results in your business. So for us, a lot of people only focus on what? The lagging. And they can't change the lagging. They can't figure out why this never changes. And the reason is they can't track the lead indicators to be able to do so. And so lead indicators are things that are actual behaviors and actions. So what would that be, you think? So that would be things like what? Dials. Appointments.
This stuff you can track, right? Like offer to bid.
Yep. So who knows how many appointments they have? right? So it's important to understand what most people, the reason that you can't change your lagging indicator, which is your results, should be things like what? Closings, income, you could be referrals, for sure. Like past client referrals, right? Yeah, in that scenario. Yeah, closings, income, listing appointments, buyer appointments, signed, listings, booked, right? How many other stuff? But I wrote in my notes, most people mess up real estate because they only look at the lagging indicators, meaning that they don't actually measure the lead. Well, the most important one is, I can watch your business success or fail on. What do you think it is? Dial's number 2 to me. Huddle attendance. Why is that, you think? It shows me your consistency. So dials over time can be, you can hide in dials. Oh, another one would be conversations. That's a big one too. Because all dials aren't created equal, right? If I look and just look at my, okay, I made, I don't remember, 10,000 dials over the quarter, whatever the number is. But if I had a 70% show ratio in the huddle, what does that mean?
30% on the table.
Yeah, you're missing 30%. It means if you had a real job, you'd be fired already. Like, that's why I said, like, if you look at our huddle attendance, almost everybody would be fired in a real job. And so if you go and understand, like, that goes back to what? My consistency and my ability to actually produce the lead indicators, which is what? Dials, appointments, booked, appointments showed, appointments signed, which would be signed clients, right? Agency agreement. That's going to be very important, too, as we go into this new thing to understand how do I measure these appointments booked, appointments signed, things like that. Overall. So once you go back and just try to collect these numbers this week, what was your huddle show ratio? How many appointments did you book? How many appointments held? How many agency agreements you have signed? How many homes shown? All right, it's important to track all that. That should be in showing time too, maybe. Contracts written to, or contracts received on the listing side, and how many were accepted. So I want to make sure figure out how to get those ratios up so I can get my lead indicators up, right? So I can figure out how do I get my closings up? Even on the listing side, right? I want to understand what my contracts received to my contracts accepted ratio is. And also, what's another big hole that people have they don't measure? Under contract to close. So a lot of people don't calculate, like they'll calculate their bills, but they got 10 bills for the same people. So it's important to understand, like, look, how am I making sure I'm measuring the right thing so I can figure out what's going on? With today's time period, you can use simple Google Docs along with AI to track anything you want. But it's important. We already have all that built out for you for the regular KPIs. But it's important for you to understand, like, look, I need you guys to have some awareness because here's my big aha why I'm teaching this today, is that you can't ever change these, the closing ones, without doing what? Knowing and tracking the behavior. And so one of the biggest frustrations to me as a business person, and this is a lesson for me, and this is a very painful lesson for me, is I've been trying to help people push and change the closings number without them actually understanding their behaviors, what's causing the closing number. I know it, I can see it. I look at the spreadsheet and they're at 65% show ratio, but they're arguing with reality and the story in their mind, thinking that, hey, look, that's actually not the problem. But in reality, all you got to do is look at their consistency, right? Because they're only showing up 60% of the time. The reality is that the consistency is not there in the rest of the business. And again, things come up or whatever it is, but we all know that dials at home are not the same as dials at work. The intensity is different, the energy is different, my ability to push back on objections is different, how I'm on the phone is different. There's all these things matter. And we all know, like, when I work at home, I'm not near as productive as I am in a working environment. It's been proven through every study since COVID. Okay, so it's important for me to understand, look, that's important for me to look at. And I want you to go back and track those numbers. So what are they? Huddle ratio, appointments booked, appointments held, agency agreement signed, home show. Now, if I don't know how many appointments I've booked myself, what does that show? That's a big problem. You got to figure out how to track your appointments, either in your calendar or through just adding tags to your people in your own, right? Add the appointment in there as an event, or you can also add that as a tag, but you got to be able to know how many appointments you're booking.